I almost didn't record this. I sat here for maybe 20 minutes, just looking at this camera, thinking about whether any of this matters anymore, whether it changes anything. I don't think it does, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because it's been sitting in me for a long time now, and I'm running out of places to put it. My name is Edward James Whitmore. People called me Eddie when I was younger. My wife called me Ed, just Ed, short and simple, the way she did most things. I'm 85 years old, and I want to talk about her. Not because she was perfect, she wasn't, and not because our life together was something out of a film, it wasn't that either. I want to talk about her because I spent 41 years saying things to her that I thought she understood, and I don't think she ever did. And I don't think I ever really understood that until she was gone, and I was sitting in this kitchen, alone, replaying every conversation we ever had in my head. That's a dangerous thing to do, by the way, replaying conversations. Because when you do it alone, after someone is gone, you start to hear them differently. You start to hear what was really being said, on both sides, and it's not always what you thought. I grew up in a house where men didn't talk about what was going on inside them. That's not an excuse, it's just the way it was. My father was a decent man, a working man. He built things with his hands, and he provided for his family, and he loved us in his way, but if you asked him how he felt about something, he would just look at you and change the subject, or he would laugh, or he would say, "I'm fine, son, don't worry about it." And I learned that, the way you learn anything from your father, not by being taught it, but by watching it happen over and over, until it becomes the only way you know how to do things. So when I met Dorothy, my Dorothy, I was already someone who kept things inside. I was already someone who said things sideways, who meant one thing and said another, who thought that if he just kept showing up, kept doing the right things, that the rest of it would be understood. It wasn't, not really, not the way I needed it to be, but I didn't know that yet. Dorothy. God, where do I even start with Dorothy? She was 23 when I met her. I was 25. It was at a barbecue, of all things. Someone's backyard, summer. One of those evenings where the light goes gold and everything looks softer than it actually is. She was laughing at something. I don't even remember what. And I looked at her and I thought, I remember this so clearly it's almost embarrassing. I thought, that's the sound. That's the sound I want to hear for the rest of my life. And I never told her that. Not once. Not in 41 years of marriage. I never said that to her. I showed her, I think, in the way I listened when she talked, in the way I would come into the room and just stay if she was laughing or talking to someone or singing along to the radio. I would find a reason to be near that sound every time. But I never said it out loud. It never occurred to me to say it out loud. It felt too large, too exposed, too much like handing someone a piece of yourself and trusting them not to drop it. So I kept it, and I thought she knew. I don't think she did. We married when I was 27. Small wedding. Her family was big and loud and warm, in a way my family never was. Her mother hugged me at the reception and said, "You take care of my girl, Eddie." And I said I would, and I meant it with everything I had. And I did take care of her. I want to be clear about that. I worked hard. I put a roof over our heads. I fixed things when they broke. I was there. I was reliably, consistently there. But taking care of someone and letting them know you see them, really see them, those are two different things, and I confused them for a very long time.
Dorothy was a woman who needed to be seen, not in a way she talked about. She didn't sit around asking for attention or complaining that I wasn't paying enough. She wasn't like that. She was proud, quietly proud, the kind of woman who would rather disappear than admit she needed something from you. But she needed it. I know that now. She needed someone to look at her and say, in words, not just actions, "I see you. I know you're there. I know what you're feeling. Tell me." And I never did. Not really. Not the way she needed. I said other things instead. Things I thought were the same. Things that felt to me like they carried the weight of everything I couldn't say directly. But they weren't the same. They weren't the same at all. I'll give you an example, because I think this is where it all lived, not in the big fights or the hard times, though there were those too. It lived in the small moments, the ones that don't seem like anything while they're happening. We had been married maybe 8 years. The kids were small. Our son, Robert, was 6, and our daughter, Claire, was 3. And one evening, after dinner, Dorothy was standing at the sink washing the dishes, and she was quiet, quieter than usual. And I could tell something was on her mind, the way you can tell with someone you've lived with for years. Something was sitting heavy on her. So I did what I knew how to do. I walked over and I picked up a towel and I started drying the dishes she was washing, without a word. I just stood there next to her and helped. And I genuinely thought that she would feel it, that she would understand what I was saying by being there, that the act of it, of just showing up, of doing the thing beside her, was its own kind of language. And maybe it was. Maybe she felt something. But what she needed, what I didn't give her, was for me to stop and look at her and say, "Hey, talk to me. What's going on?" 3 words. Talk to me. I never said them, not that night, not often enough, ever. And I dried every dish in silence, and we put them away, and we went to bed, and whatever it was that was sitting heavy on her, I never found out what it was. She never told me, and I never asked. That's the pattern, you see. That's how it went for years and years and years. Me showing up, me doing the things, me being there, in the room, in the life, in the kitchen, in the bed, always there, but never quite arriving at the place where she actually was. I thought proximity was the same as closeness. I thought that if I was near her, I was close to her. But closeness isn't about being in the same room. It's about being in the same moment. And most of the time, we were in different moments. She was somewhere inside herself, somewhere I could have reached if I had just tried, and I was standing right next to her, looking at the dishes, drying the plates.
The years went by the way they do. Robert grew up and moved away. Claire did the same a few years later. The house got quiet. Dorothy and I were just the 2 of us again, the way we had been at the very beginning, except now everything was worn in. The furniture, the carpet, the conversations. We had a routine, breakfast together. She read the paper, I drank my coffee. We talked about small things, what needed doing, what was on the news, whether it was going to rain. And it was fine. It was comfortable. It was the kind of life that looks, from the outside, like 2 people who have figured it out, who have made it work. But there were afternoons when I would catch her looking out the window at nothing, just staring. And I would watch her for a moment, and I would think, "What are you thinking about?" And the thought would cross my mind, and then I would let it go, because asking felt like disturbing something, like breaking a silence that had been there so long it had become structural, part of the house itself. So I didn't ask, and she didn't tell me,
and we both just carried on. I think about those afternoons a lot now. I think about all the times I saw her somewhere I couldn't quite reach, and I chose not to try. Not because I didn't care, because I didn't know how, because reaching meant saying something real, and saying something real meant being seen, and being seen meant being vulnerable, and I had spent my entire life learning that vulnerability was something you avoided, something quiet and small and dangerous. So I avoided it, and I let her sit by the window, and I drank my coffee, and the afternoon passed. There was one time, one specific time, that I think about more than any other. It was maybe 10 years before she got sick, so I would have been in my mid-70s, and we were lying in bed at night, lights off, and she said something, just quietly, into the dark. She said, "Ed, do you ever wonder if we really know each other?" And I remember the question landing. I remember feeling something shift when she said it, something uncomfortable, something that felt in that moment like a door opening onto something I didn't want to look at. And I could have said, "Yes, I think about that. Tell me what you mean. Tell me what you're wondering about. Let's stay awake and talk about it." Instead, I said, "Of course we do, Dot. We've been together 40 years. And she didn't say anything else, and after a while her breathing changed and she was asleep. And I lay there in the dark for a long time, staring at the ceiling. I knew even then that I had given her the wrong answer. I knew it in my body, the way you know something before your mind catches up. But I didn't go back to it. I didn't turn over and say, "Hey, what did you mean by that? I want to know." I just lay there, and then I fell asleep too. And the morning came, and we had breakfast, and she read the paper, and I drank my coffee, and neither of us mentioned it again.
Dorothy got sick when she was 79. It was sudden, the way these things sometimes are. One day she was fine, and then she wasn't. And then the doctors were saying words I had never wanted to hear, and the world got very small very quickly. And I want to tell you, in those last months, something changed between us. Something opened up, not because we suddenly became different people, but because the walls that had been there for decades, the quiet, careful, unspoken walls, they started to feel less important, like they were made of something lighter than I had always thought. She told me things in those months, small things, things she had been holding for years, like she was emptying out a drawer she had never looked through before. She told me about a summer early in our marriage when she had been very lonely and I had been working too much, and she had sat in the garden for hours feeling invisible. She told me she had once almost called her sister to say she was unhappy and then put the phone down because she didn't want to worry anyone. She told me these things quietly, without anger, without blame, just telling me, the way you tell someone something when you finally decide it doesn't have to be a secret anymore. And I listened to every word, and I wanted to say so much. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry I didn't see that. I'm sorry I was so close to you and so far away at the same time. I'm sorry I thought showing up was enough." And some nights I did say parts of it, stumbling, awkward parts, words that came out crooked because I had never practiced using them. But there were other things, the bigger things, the things that had been living in me for decades. Those I still couldn't get out. They were stuck somewhere deep in a place that 40 years of silence had made very hard to reach. And Dorothy,
She looked at me sometimes in those last weeks with an expression I can only describe as patient, like she was waiting for something, like she knew there was more I wanted to say, and she was giving me the time to find it. I didn't find it, not all of it, not fast enough. She died on a Wednesday morning in the hospital. I was holding her hand. The children were there. It was quiet, the way she would have wanted it to be quiet. And after everyone had stepped out and it was just me sitting with her, I said it. I said all of it. Everything I had been keeping, everything I had been carrying in silence for 41 years. I said it out loud in that room, with no one there but her. I told her about the barbecue, about the sound of her laughing, about every time I stood next to her at the sink and meant to say something real and didn't, about the night in the dark when she asked me if we knew each other and I gave her the easy answer instead of the true one. I told her I loved her in a way I never knew how to say, that every single time I dried a dish or fixed a fence or showed up, what I was really trying to say was, you are the most important thing that ever happened to me, and I am sorry I spent our whole life together not knowing how to tell you that. I said all of it. And of course, she couldn't hear me. Or maybe she could. I don't know. I don't know how any of that works. But I said it. Finally, I said it.
It's been 4 years now. The house is the same. The kitchen is the same. Her chair is still there at the table, and I haven't moved it. I don't think I will. Some mornings I sit across from it with my coffee, and it feels like she might walk in any second, read the paper, look up at me over the top of it, say something dry and quiet that makes me almost laugh. She had a wit, Dorothy, a very dry wit, the kind that sneaks up on you, and I never told her how much I loved that about her either. Another thing I kept inside, thinking she knew. I think she did know some of it. I have to believe that. I have to believe that after 41 years of living next to someone, some of it gets through. Some of it seeps through the walls, even if you never say it out loud. But some of it didn't. Some of it stayed locked inside me, and she went her whole life not knowing it was there. And that's the thing I carry now. Not the grief of losing her. That's there too, of course it is, but it fades the way grief does into something quieter. What doesn't fade is the knowledge that I had something to give her, and I never gave it. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know how, because no one taught me. Because I learned a long time ago that the things you feel the most are the things you keep the most hidden. And by the time I unlearned that, by the time I understood it was wrong, there wasn't enough time left to do it differently. I'm not a wise man. I want to be honest about that. I don't have some grand understanding of life that I've arrived at. I'm just an old man in a kitchen trying to make sense of things that don't entirely make sense. But I know this much. I know that the words you keep inside don't protect anyone, not you, not the person you're keeping them from. They just sit there, getting heavier, getting quieter, until one day you're alone in a room and you finally let 'em out, and there's no one left to hear them. That's not a warning. I'm not trying to warn you about anything. I'm just telling you what happened to me, what happened to us, to Ed and Dorothy Whitmore, in a kitchen, over 41 years of mornings. If you've sat with me through all of this, I want you to know that means something to me.
more than I expected it to, honestly. And if there's something sitting inside you, something you haven't said to someone, something that feels too big or too heavy or too real to say out loud, well, you know it's there now. That's all I wanted to do, just say it was there. Thank you for listening to me.